Before we begin, a brief reminder to simply click the subscribe button. Just 4% of my channel is subscribed. Using concealed superior fleets to destroy the alien civilization, this narrative about the story shows mankind's terrible revenge against the Vari Dominion, who had earlier captured Earth. Following their taking of their retribution, mankind leaves inexplicably, leaving only a terrifying warning that they are still observing and will return should provocation once again be triggered. Now we correctly begin the narrative. The Galactic fleet floated above the burning remnants of Earth's final orbital defenses. Declaration of victory had been issued. On the command deck of his cruiser, Admiral Zor of the Vari Dominion stared at the wrecked blue planet below. Fleet captains sent reports confirming the same thing. Humanity was finished. The Vithari were a proud and ancient species governing large areas of the galaxy. The last opposition had been crushed, and the Dominion had conquered the Sol system entirely. Humanity, a youthful and feisty upstart, had ventured to fight their Dominion for years. Earth had not been kneeling, thus the fight had dragged on. But the Dominion had at last applied its whole might. The orbital bombardment had left entire continents to rubble, leaving nothing but isolated survivors cowering in underground bunkers. The great cities of Earth, New York, Tokyo, London, lay in ruins. There was no fleet left, no standing, forced to stop them. A holographic transmission came to life before Admiral Zor, presenting the grinning face of High Chancellor Rear. "It is done, then?" the Chancellor asked. "Yes, High Chancellor," Zor replied, his mandibles snapping in satisfaction. "Humanity has been eradicated as a military threat. The planet will be occupied within the next rotation. Their surviving population will be subjugated as per your orders." Rear nodded. "Good. The Dominion has no need for rebels. Make an example of them. Let the galaxy know what happens to those who resist our will." With that, the connection terminated, and the Admiral allowed himself a minute to wallow in victory. The conflict had been harsh, but the outcome was inevitable. The Dominion was an empire encompassing hundreds of star systems. Humanity had been nothing more than an obstinate annoyance. Then the alarms blared. A harsh, piercing howl resonated through the command deck. Officers hurried to their stations. Zor turned sharply. "Report!" An Admiral Sensor officer stammered. We're detecting multiple warp signatures. Massive energy surges at the edge of the system." Zor scowled. This was impossible. The human fleet had been obliterated. Earth's shipyards have been reduced to ashes. Where could reinforcements be coming from? "Put it on the main display," he ordered. The holographic panel flashed, and the bridge crew collectively recoiled. Space at the outskirts of the Sol. System twisted and scorched as something erupted from the void. Something gigantic. No, not something. Many things. Hundreds of ships materialized in perfect formation, their dark hulls reflecting the distant light of the sun. They weren't like the weak, obsolete warships the Vithari had fought and destroyed before. These were huge warships, titanic behemoths bristling with weaponry that hummed with scarcely controlled force. Zor felt a cold fear seep into his bones. "By the void, what are those?" a voice came from behind him. The Admiral turned to find a captured human officer, held in handcuffs, staring at the screen with a cruel smirk. The prisoner, Captain Elias Graves of the United Earth Navy, had been taken alive just days previously. Zor had disregarded him, figuring his people were long extinct. "Impossible," Zor snarled. "Humanity had no such fleet. We destroyed your shipyards." Graves chuckled, a hollow, dismal sound. "Yeah, you destroyed what we wanted you to see." Zor's mandibles twisted in wrath. "Explain yourself, human," Graves smirked. "You thought Earth was our stronghold? That was just our home. Our real fleets were elsewhere, preparing for this moment. We saw what happened to the other species. You conquered. We knew this day would come." Zor went back to the display. More ships rushed out of warp, an unending stream of steel and firepower. The greatest of them loomed at the core of the formation, a gigantic warship unlike anything the Dominion had ever seen. It dwarfed even Zor's flagship, a huge colossus created for one purpose: complete annihilation. A communication immediately. Cut through their comms, overriding their encryption, the Dominion's fleet was being hailed. Zor pondered for a few periods before accepting the transmission. The screen flickered again, and the image of a human admiral appeared. A woman with, steel gray eyes and a uniform decorated with the insignia of the United Earth Navy. "This is Admiral Catherine Mercer of the UNV Warhammer," she said, her voice bearing the weight of 1,000 conflicts. "To the Vari fleet occupying Sol, you have one chance. Surrender now or be destroyed." Silence descended across the bridge. Zor's officers glanced to him, waiting for his response. He bared his fangs in anger. "You think you can threaten us, human? We are the Vari Dominion. We crushed your world." "Time's up," Mercer interrupted. "Open fire!" The display flashed white as the first volley struck. The war for Earth had only barely begun. The silence before the storm lasted hardly more than a second. Then, the dreadnoughts started fire. From the huge hulls of the United Earth, Navy's vessels emerged lances of energy so fierce they converted the nothingness of space into a battleground of light and fury. The first volley struck true, striking into the Dominion's outermost warships with terrible precision. Shield generators built to withstand normal human weapons crumpled and crumbled under the sheer intensity of the onslaught. Explosions swept across the Vithari fleet. Battleships that had formerly poured fire upon Earth's surface were now broken apart like fragile toys. Fireballs exploded in the icy vacuum of space, engulfing sailors who had felt the war was already won. Admiral Zor hardly had time to react. "Evasive maneuvers! Raise the defensive grid! Return fire now!" he screamed. The bridge burst into turmoil as officers rushed to communicate orders. The Dominion's fleet feverishly scrambled to arrange a counterattack. Plasma turrets and ion lances blasted wildly into the darkness. But it was evident within moments that something was badly wrong. The human dreadnoughts weren't simply big. They were quick. Dominion battleships were designed for attrition warfare, methodically advancing and overpowering foes with sheer firepower and numbers. But these human behemoths moved with unnatural agility, dodging through the confusion of fight like predators. Amid prey. Then came the second wave. The Warhammer, Admiral Mercer's flagship, pushed forward, spearheading the assault. Dozens of huge weapons along its hull unleashed a deadly barrage that obliterated an entire squadron of Vithari cruisers. In a second, another dreadnought tore through the Dominion's formation, its railguns penetrating even the strongest shields like they were paper. The Dominion's vast fleet, the same force that had raised Earth's surface, was being pulled apart. Zor's mind world. This was impossible. The humans should have been beaten. They should have been scattered, broken, pleading for mercy. Instead, they had come back stronger, with weapons the Dominion had never seen before. Desperate, Zor turned to his weapons officer. "Target their lead ship. I want that dreadnought destroyed." The officer's claws shook as he relayed the command. The Vari's heaviest vessels fixed their sights on the Warhammer. A maelstrom of plasma torpedoes and antimatter lances raced toward the human flagship. The vacuum itself seemed to shudder at the sheer amount of weaponry unleashed. For a moment, Zor felt a glimmer of relief. No ship, no matter how powerful, could resist a frontal hit from the whole might of the Dominion's navy. Then the Warhammer's shields flashed. Instead of crumbling, they absorbed the hit, distributing the energy harmlessly throughout their surface. The torpedoes detonated, but the damage was limited. The dreadnought emerged from the barrage unscathed. What technology is this?" Zor murmured. The captured human captain, Elias Graves, still standing in his chains at the back of the bridge, grinned bitterly. "You're not fighting the same Earth you thought you conquered." Zor turned to him in rage. "What did you do?" Graves smirked. "We knew you were coming. We've been preparing for decades. The Dominion always assumed that humanity was reckless, that their resistance was an act of desperation rather than strategy. But the truth was far more terrifying. Humanity hadn't lost the war. They had played dead. The old fleet that the Vari had obliterated. They were sacrifices. Outdated ships meant to give the illusion of weakness. The shipyards the Dominion had bombed into oblivion. Decoys. The real war effort had been happening off-world, in hidden bases scattered throughout. Deep space. Entire fleets had been built in the darkness, beyond the reach of the Dominion's gaze. And now they had returned. The Vari weren't fighting desperate rebels. They were facing an entire species that had spent decades mastering the art of war. A new transmission interrupted the bridge's chaos. Admiral Mercer's visage appeared. Once more, her demeanor stern and ruthless. "Admiral Zor," she replied, "I gave you a chance to surrender. You chose otherwise. Now we end this." Before Zor could answer, the Warhammer fired its main weapon. A beam of pure energy, brighter than a dying star, tore through space. It smashed into the Dominion's flagship, a huge battleship at the heart of the formation. The shields didn't even have time to fail. The entire ship burst quickly, destroyed by the sheer intensity of the crash. Zor's mandibles trembled. He has seen planetary bombardments with less destructive energy than that single shot. The Dominion was losing. No, they had already lost. "Sir," a Vari officer muttered in despair, "our ships are breaking formation. The fleet is in full. Retreat!" Zor's thoughts reeled. The Vithari never retreated. They were conquerors, the dominant force in the cosmos. But now they were nothing more than prey. Captain Graves breathed softly, watching the battlefield unfold on the view screen. He shook his head. "You should have left us alone." The Vari declared victory too soon. Now, humanity will teach them what real war looks like. Earth never forgave. The Vari fleet was in full retreat. What had begun as a triumphal demonstration of Dominion superiority had turned into an unfathomable nightmare. Their warships, once so certain in their conquest, were now scattering like flies before a wildfire. Admiral Zor could scarcely absorb the scenario unfolding before him. The Vithari Dominion did not retreat. In all their years of interstellar conquest, no species had ever pushed them back, until now. But retreat did not mean survival. The human dreadnoughts were unrelenting. They moved with terrible coordination, shutting off escape routes and obliterating any Vithari vessel that strayed too far from the disintegrating formation. The Dominion's fleet, which had invaded the Sol system as an unstoppable army, was now a splintered swarm of fleeing wreckage. Zor's personal flagship, the Vicari, had suffered catastrophic damage. The once mighty warship trembled as emergency protocols tried to protect its systems from failing completely. Fires blazed on many decks, and the screams of dying crew filled the comm channels. A communications officer, his voice shaking, yelled out, "Admiral, we're receiving distress signals from over 200 ships. Many have lost all power. The humans, they are boarding them." Zor's mandibles clenched. Boarding? The Vari had always imagined humans fought like prey. Defensive, desperate, weak. But these were not the individuals they had studied. These were something else entirely. He turned to his tactical officer. "Deploy all remaining fighters. Buy us time to escape." The officer paused. "Sir, we don't have enough left. Our squadrons—" A profound tremor raced through the ship as another explosion rocked the hull. The Vicari was receiving direct fire. And then the worst conceivable thing happened. The lights on the bridge flickered and died. A single sound replaced them, a deep mechanical hum. It was the sound of a boarding breach. Zor barely had time to reach for his sidearm before the reinforced blast doors at the far end of the bridge blew inward. Through the smoke and fire, they emerged. Humans, not the feeble diplomats or timid prisoners the Vari had experienced previously. These were troops, clad in black combat armor that pulsed with a peculiar, shifting energy. Their weapons were unlike anything Zor had ever seen. Sleek, efficient, engineered for combat on a level beyond Dominion knowledge. At their head stood Captain Elias Graves, liberated from his chains, wearing a blood-stained Vithari officer's coat over his human battle armor. Graves gazed at Zor with a chilly, knowing smile. "Told you we were just getting started," he said. Zor's mind raced. How had Graves gotten free? How had the humans infiltrated their flagship? Had the Dominion truly underestimated them? Thus badly? A Vari guard moved forward, but before he could fire, Graves blasted a single round through his brain. The creature crumpled quickly. Zor reached for his own weapon, but never got the chance to use it. Graves rushed faster than Zor had believed possible, seizing the Admiral by the throat and smashing him against the burning console. The Vari's mandibles clicked in fright as he struggled against the human's grip. "You don't look so high and mighty now, do you?" Graves hissed. "Not so tough when your fleet's burning, huh?" Zor whispered, his vision blurring. "Your species was supposed to be inferior." Graves roared out a laugh. "Yeah, we hear that a lot." He slammed Zor to the floor, his boot pressing down hard on the Admiral's chest. "You made one big mistake, Bug," Zor wheezed. "What mistake?" Graves came in close, his eyes blazing with something primal, something furious. "You didn't finish the job." With a rapid motion, Graves raised his rifle and fired. The last thing Admiral Zor saw was a burst of blue light before his world went dark. Across the battlefield, the Dominion crumbled. With their flagship leaderless and their warships being systematically decimated, the remaining Vari forces tried a full-scale surrender. But Earth did not accept surrender so lightly. The dreadnoughts kept shooting. Boarding teams continued their merciless sweep of captive vessels, ensuring that no Vari officer would live to fight war again. The Dominion had devastated Earth, murdered billions, and grinned as they declared victory. Now they would learn what retribution looked like. Admiral Mercer observed from the bridge of the Warhammer, her expression unreadable. "Status report," she commanded. A lieutenant said, "The last of the major Dominion warships are disabled. Some are trying to jump to warp." A distant explosion lit up the view screen as another escaping Vari spacecraft was annihilated. "They're not getting far," Mercer sighed gently. This was justice, but it was also just the beginning. She turned to her officers. "We send a message to the rest of the galaxy," she ordered. The comms officer nodded. Moments later, a transmission went out, one that would resonate across every Dominion world, every conquered system, every species that had ever suffered under Vithari tyranny. The message was simple. Earth is not conquered. Humanity stands, and now we are coming for you. The war wasn't over. It had barely just begun. The galaxy trembled. For generations, the Vari Dominion has reigned with an iron grasp. Their fleets were unparalleled, their strength uncontested. They had crushed empires, devastated civilizations, and rewritten history as they saw fit. And yet, in a single battle, they had lost everything. The collapse of the Dominion's mighty fleet at Earth was not only a military defeat, it was a message. The species they had rejected as primitive, the race they had promised to eradicate, had not only survived, but had returned with a fury so cruel, so merciless, that it sent shockwaves across the cosmos. The broadcast from Admiral Sakdes, Mercer echoed across Dominion space. Millions of Vithari civilians watched in horrified silence as the once mighty fleet burned, as their warriors were slaughtered, and as the humans delivered a chilling declaration of war. Earth is not conquered. Humanity stands, and now we are. Coming for you? Panic spread like wildfire on the Dominion homeworld of Zakar. High Chancellor Reth-Zir stood in his private chamber, mandibles twitching as he replayed the footage for the third time. He could not believe what he was seeing. The Warhammer and its dreadnoughts had torn through the Grand Fleet like it was nothing. The admiral he had trusted, Zor, had been killed aboard his own ship, his corpse likely floating somewhere in the cold void. The unstoppable armada that had raised Earth had been hunted down like prey. This was not how it was supposed to happen. Reth-Zir's advisors stood behind him, their normally arrogant postures stiff with fear. One of them, Minister Koth, finally spoke. "High Chancellor," he said carefully, "we must prepare for the worst." Reth-Zir turned sharply. The worst? The worst was supposed to be our victory. He slammed a clawed fist on the table. "We wiped out their defenses. We burned their world. How could they have built such a fleet in secret?" The other advisors exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, another minister spoke. "We underestimated them." Reth-Zir's eyes burned with fury. "We dominate this galaxy. Humanity was just another rebellious species, another empire to be crushed." Cathy shook his head. "No, High Chancellor, they were never an empire." Reth-Zir narrowed his eyes. "What are you saying?" the minister exhaled. "Empires fight for resources. They conquer for control. The humans are not fighting for either. They are fighting for revenge, and that makes them more dangerous than anything we've ever faced." Silence filled the chamber because they all knew he was right. Empires could be reasoned with, civilizations could be negotiated with, but a species fighting for vengeance, there was no stopping that. And then the alarms blared. A panicked officer rushed into the room, eyes wide with terror. "High Chancellor, the humans are here!" For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Reth-Zir stepped forward. "What?" The officer gulped. "A massive fleet has just dropped out of warp at the edge of Dominion space. Their warships, their dreadnoughts, they are advancing at full speed." Reth-Zir's blood ran cold. They had no time. The war hadn't just begun. It was already at their doorstep. At the helm of the Warhammer, Admiral Mercer stood tall, her gaze fixed on the holographic display of the Dominion's border defenses. The enemy stations were scrambling to react, but it was already too late. The humans were here. "Admiral," a bridge officer reported, Enemy defenses are powering up. They are preparing to fire. Mercer exhaled. Let them. The Warhammer and its fleet did not slow down. They did not open negotiations. They simply fired. First, a wall of energy and kinetic destruction surged forward. Railguns capable of tearing through planets. Plasma lances that burned like miniature stars. Humanity's full arsenal was unleashed in one single terrifying barrage. The Dominion's border defenses, once considered impenetrable, shattered in seconds. Space itself seemed to tremble as human warships tore through Vari installations. Their precision strikes were surgical, brutal, and relentless. Within minutes, entire defensive stations were nothing but floating wreckage. For centuries, the Dominion had ruled as gods. Now they were running. Mercer watched as Dominion warships attempted to flee deeper into their own space. She did not let them. Deploy hunter squadrons, she ordered. From the hangars of Earth's warships, sleek black interceptors launched into the void. They moved with terrifying speed, hunting down escaping Vari vessels like wolves chasing wounded prey. Across the Dominion's border worlds, chaos erupted. Civilian populations, once confident in the safety of their mighty empire, now screamed in terror as human warships darkened their skies. Cities burned, military bases crumbled, and unlike the Vari, who had left survivors to spread fear, the humans were different. They left no one behind. Every military installation was systematically wiped out. Every warship was hunted to the last. This was not war. This was retribution. On a Dominion-controlled colony, a terrified governor tried desperately to send out a distress signal. His claws trembled as he activated the transmission beacon, hoping, praying that someone somewhere would send help. Then the screen flickered. A human appeared. Admiral Mercer. Her expression was cold, her eyes like steel. "This is Admiral Mercer of the United Earth Navy," she said calmly. "Your leaders have led you into ruin. Your empire is dying, your fleet is gone. There is no escape." The governor swallowed hard, his mandibles clattering in fear. Mercer continued. "The Dominion burned Earth. They slaughtered billions of innocent lives." She leaned forward. "And now, we are here to return the favor." The governor's breathing grew frantic. "Please, we are just civilians. We surrender." Mercer did not blink. "There is no surrender." The transmission cut out. Moments later, the colony was erased from existence. From the ruins of their empire, the Vari finally understood the truth. Humanity was not an empire to be conquered. They were a storm, a force of nature that had been unleashed upon the stars, and they would not stop until the Dominion was ashes. The Dominion was collapsing, system by system, world by world. Entire planets that had once flown the Vithari banner now burned beneath the black hulls of Earth's warships. The galaxy's once mighty conquerors found themselves facing a force they could not comprehend, a force driven not by conquest, not by greed, but by pure, unrelenting hatred. There was no diplomacy, no offers of surrender, only fire. On the frozen colony of Gerelis, the sky split apart as the first human dreadnoughts entered orbit. The Vari governor, a creature who had overseen the enslavement of 24 human cities during the occupation of Earth, watched in horror from the safety of his bunker. His mind clung to the old arrogance. Surely they would offer terms. Surely the humans would want prisoners or territory. But the humans did not hail them. They did not negotiate. They simply began the extermination. Orbital bombardments hammered the colony's defenses, reducing centuries of Vari architecture to molten slag in mere minutes. Anti-air batteries that had stood for generations were reduced to craters before they could fire a single shot. And when the smoke cleared, the humans came down. They moved in perfect formations. Black-armored infantry, cold and methodical. They gave no quarter. Entire Vari cities were dragged from their homes. Military officers were executed on sight. Civilians who had cheered during the conquest of Earth were lined up in the streets and left to rot. By nightfall, Gerelis belonged to Earth. No prisoners, no survivors. The humans didn't even bother raising their own flag. They left the ruins empty, a warning to every Dominion world that still remained. Deep within the Vari Dominion, whispers spread. The humans weren't simply retaliating for the war. They were avenging every atrocity the Vari had ever committed. For centuries, the Dominion had enslaved weaker species, raised worlds, executed entire populations, and written off entire civilizations as nothing more than footnotes in history. Now, those sins were being repaid in full, one massacre at a time. On Yaros Prime, the Dominion had once forced captured humans to build monuments to Vari victory, great towers made of metal and bone where human slaves had died by the thousands. Now, those monuments were reduced to dust. The humans had come. For them too. They left no records, no memorials, only ash. For the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy was silent. The war was over. The Vari Dominion, an empire that had once stretched across thousands of star systems, was gone. Its homeworlds were reduced to barren wastelands. Its fleets turned to drifting wreckage. Its rulers executed with the same merciless efficiency with which they had once ruled. The species that had enslaved entire civilizations, raised planets, and rewritten history as they saw fit had been erased. Not conquered, not subjugated, erased. The galaxy did not mourn them, but it feared what had taken their place. The United Earth Navy, the dreadnoughts, the black-armored soldiers, the unstoppable war machine that had brought the Dominion to its knees should have ruled the stars after. Their victory, they had the firepower, the technology. They could have built their own empire, subjugated weaker species, become the new dominant force in the galaxy. But they didn't. As suddenly as they had arrived, humanity vanished. The dreadnoughts that had darkened the skies above Vari homeworlds disappeared into the void. The soldiers that had executed Dominion leaders one by one were never seen again. They left behind no occupied worlds, no ruling government, no demands, only ruins. It was as if they had never been there at all, except for the nightmares they left behind. In the aftermath of the war, the surviving species gathered in secret. The once mighty empires of the galaxy, the Traki, the Zillion, the Ri Confederacy, met on neutral ground to discuss one thing only: the humans. "We must learn from the Vari mistake," one Oki diplomat said, his voice shaking. Humanity was underestimated. The price was extinction. "They are gone now," a Taraki warlord growled. "Why should we fear them?" The others exchanged nervous glances. That was the question no one could answer. No one had seen a human since the war ended. No distress signals, no new colonies, no ambassadors, no broadcasts, no signs of life at Yis all. It was as if they had simply disappeared, and yet their warning remained. Across the ruins of Vari space, the message still echoed through abandoned comms relays, etched into the shattered remains of planetary outposts. A final reminder, a final threat. "We are watching. We are waiting. Strike at us again, and we will return. And this time, we will not leave anything behind." Centuries passed. A new galactic order formed. Old empires fell, new ones rose. But none dared to claim the space where the Vari had once ruled. It remained untouched, the haunted remains of a species that had been wiped from existence. Travelers whispered of strange anomalies in the abandoned sectors, ships that never returned, buried fleets that simply vanished. And in the dark, among the wreckage of dead planets, some swore they saw them. Black warships moving without sound, appearing only for an instant before disappearing back into the void. A ghost fleet, a reminder that somewhere out there, humanity still watched, waiting, ready. On a lonely outpost at the edge of the galaxy, an automated distress signal flickered to life. A cargo freighter, missing for weeks, had suddenly reappeared, drifting in space. A salvage team was sent to investigate. When they boarded, they found no crew, no signs of struggle, only a single message, written in old Terran script, burned into the walls of the bridge. 3 words. "We never left." The galaxy shuddered, because now they finally understood. Humanity was not a race. It was not an empire. It was a warning, and it would never fade. Hey everyone, if you enjoy these epic HFY stories, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and drop a comment below to let us know your favorite part or what stories you'd love to hear next.